Jane Leavy, welcome back to the Bookshelf Conversations.
I like that you actually have bookshelves in there, Ron. That's encouraging.
Well, I mean, otherwise it would be false advertising.
I can't stand that thought.
So, your new book, Make Me Commissioner, I Know What's Wrong with Baseball and How to Fix It. It's a bit of a departure from your three previous best-selling books, The Big Fella on Babe Ruth, the last one, Mickey Mantle, and A Lefty's Legacy on Sandy Koufax. Uh, did you get tired of the biographies?
No, I couldn't find one to do. I
Really?
I fully thought after the Babe had his way with me that it took 8 years for him to finish with me. That there would be another sporting life if giving even the broader realm of sports, right, not just baseball, that I would find another life that I thought could tell a story that was about more than just a person, but that illustrated something important. The Babe was a book about the creation of athletic celebrity, and Mickey was a book about New York baseball in the 50s and how vulnerable athletes were in the days before Bill W. showed up in Oklahoma to teach people the perils of alcoholism. And Sandy, of course, was about a transition time in baseball when, the duration of his career when he, came up in 55, quit after 66. And it was during that period, at the very end of that period, which is one of upheaval in the country, of course, that the baseball players were organized by Marvin Miller. And free agency was on the horizon. It would take another, decade or so, but it was coming. So I was looking for another story like that. I have a couple of rules, self-imposed rules about subjects. One, if I think somebody's done a subject so well that there's nothing that can be done except to say, okay, I'll take completely the opposite point of view, whether it has merit or not, I'm not going to do it. Um, I don't think anybody will ever equal Richard Ben Kramer's biography of Joe DiMaggio, and I wouldn't presume to try. Um, the other rule I have is that if a friend's done it, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, I'm not gonna
Hmm.
go there.
Interesting.
And so when you remove all those and you start to look for latter day athletes, what you find, or what I found anyway, was there wasn't a life that was complete enough. People tend to, especially in sports biographies, tend to try to write the story of the career or the professional life before it's concluded. Richard Ben Kramer ran into that before his premature death when he tried to do Alex Rodriguez. And it was just in the beginning of the steroid revelations about him, and he was unable to finish it. I have no idea where all that material went, but if you had written, in fact, people did write books in the midst of that because publishing now allows you to do things quicker, right? But that's not always a good thing to do, to do it quicker. You need the full arc of a life or a career. And the other thing that makes it harder is that the access to these folks is so much is so diminished. There's no sidling up to the bench and the dugout and just hanging out and shooting the breeze and saying, and really getting to know someone. It's so managed and doled out in such, little bits of time. I'm going to clean this up for you because why not? But the first time at the very beginning of the research for this book, which was I actually started in 2021. I went to Nats Park here in Washington, where I live, to talk to Francisco Lindor. And this was actually opening day 2022. And I walk into the Mets visiting locker room, um, and there are no players. None, zero, zilch, nada. Now, remember, I used to do this for a living. Not that I liked it, going into men's locker rooms full of naked bodies you do not know is not anybody's idea of a good time, no matter what the great reading public may think. But there were no athletes. What there was, however, was a gaggle of female reporters, which of course made my, heart beat fast because I was always alone when I was doing that back in the day for the Washington Post. And they were having a conversation because one of them was very pregnant about specifics and details of deliveries. And I thought, oh my God, how much has changed in this world? But, and it was hilarious. It'd be even funnier if I told you what they were really talking about or the specifics. But, I thought how much the world has changed for the good in terms of the number of women covering the sport, but also you can't talk to people. They're not there. They're just not there.
So that makes me think, now that I think of reading the book, most of it, uh, the interviews you've done, the things you've covered, aside from talking with Rizzo, uh, have been minor league things. So I imagine the access is a little easier when you want to talk about baseball with minor league situations.
I don't really think that's true, Ron. The two current players that I spent the most time with were J.P. Crawford, the Mariners, shortstop for the Mariners, and then third baseman for the Astros, Alex Bregman. And those guys were very available and continued to text with me and converse with me throughout the process of writing the book. So, but you really have to forge an unusual personal relationship to be able to do that. And I don't, and minor leagues, I was talking with somebody last night. It's not that much easier. It's all very managed. And I think you're talking about Chase DeLauter, who is a great story. Chase DeLauter was the first round draft choice of the Cleveland Guardians in 2021. It was 2021? No, 20. He was at the Cape League in 2021, which is where I met him. And then he became the first round draft choice of the Guardians, but has been injured ever since. And finally, unbelievably, I mean, this is a star-crossed guy, made his major league debut for the Guardians in their last round of the playoffs this year.
The I I'm going to be a little insensitive here. You and I are both of an age where
We're
we
old. We're
I,
old.
I didn't want to be that blunt about it, but but now that you say that, has for you personally, I mean, you've been doing this as a career for many, many years. Has a game changed for you in such a way that you find it difficult to stay with it?
No.
Good
No,
for you.
I
Good for
got
you.
I got a rave review yesterday from Mark Leibovich in the Atlantic, who got the sense of humor in the book, which is thank you, Mark. I really was grateful for that. He's a very funny guy, and he got it. Uh, but he said, "Oh, Jane is more disaffected." He didn't use that specific word, and I'm thinking, "No, I'm not. Where did you get that?" I say quite clearly, I'm the person who watches a game, any game, every night during the baseball season. I mean, baseball got me through three knee replacements. Baseball got me through a unpleasant divorce. Baseball got me through an empty nest. Um, it's part of me. And do I like the way the game is played? Do I like the completely inept New York Yankees last night in losing to a much better Toronto Blue Jays team, um, and who demonstrated all the things that you need to be able to do on a baseball field that they don't prize in the Bronx. No, I don't enjoy that, but I'm very clued in and tuned into it daily, unfortunately. I'm still, like holding my breath during hot stove season.
The one of the things I find personally is I'm in it for the nostalgia. You write about nostalgia in the book. It's gotten to a point where Topps is producing every year what they call a heritage series, which harkens back to designs that when I was a kid I used to collect. And I'm more interested in seeing those designs again of the card because as I've been recovering from surgery for the last couple of months, I had a chance to watch a lot of baseball too. And I, like you, I took it as much as I could. I hardly know who any of these players are anymore. And as they become young enough to, like each generation that that passes, I mean, when they were young enough to be my kids, it's one thing, but some of these enough are young enough to be my grandkids now. And the way the rosters turn over so quickly. I mean, back when Mantle was on the Yankees, if you had 40, 45 players for an entire season, that was a lot. Now you have 45 by the All-Star break.
Dodgers had 47 different pitchers this year. Mets 46.
It's hard to keep up.
Well, I think there are a couple of factors. Yes, it is hard to keep up. There's roster churn of a nature, and that's a really good word. I don't know who originated it in this context, but it's a very good way to describe what's on it, what's going on. You know, rosters once were stable, pitching staffs once were stable.
Mhm,
Leo Mazzoni, the great pitching coach for the Atlanta Braves, or the staffs of Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz, told me I had 2 years in the 90s where, that none of them missed a start. I tried to get somebody to prove that to me. Well, the records don't go back that far. Even Major League Baseball couldn't show. I would have had to go, player by player, game by game to prove that. But if it wasn't literally the case, it would have been close to the case. And you would have had players who stayed on the roster from opening day till the end of the season,
mhm,
which would give you a chance to know them. I think that there's another factor that bleeds into this, which is this: 28% of all major leaguers, maybe a little more this year, were Hispanic, Latin, Spanish speaking players. They are among the most exciting, dynamic, effusive players on the field. Don't get me wrong, I'm not in any way bemoaning that. I think that's great, but it's hard to know them because of the language barrier. And when I'm commissioner, Ron, I think it behooves, I don't know how you enforce this, but I'll find out by the time I'm commissioner. Um, I think it behooves Major League Baseball and clubs to say to these guys, you need to be able to communicate directly. The translators on the field have become, a norm. But did they really tell you anything? Do you know what's really being said? Players get away with not saying anything. Now, you can do that in English too. I mean, Derek Jeter was a master of showing up and always saying something after every game, and then you'd go back and you'd look at your notes and say, he didn't say anything, you know? So there is that, but I think one of the things that touched me a lot about Bregman was he's going back and polishing up his high school Spanish
mhm.
to be able to communicate with his teammates.
I looked up some of those videos that you mentioned in the book about
Right,
Bregman on YouTube
right.
learning speaking Spanish.
They're hilarious,
Mhm.
but wonderful. And you know, the notion of being a club, good in the clubhouse, a clubhouse guy who's chemistry and a leader and all that stuff uh, is poo-pooed these days. That's one of the great things about him as a player. And anyway, I'm diverting from what you said, but it is much harder to know them because of the number of them. Just look at the numbers on their backs. You know,
Yeah.
we're out of single digits. We're out of double digits.
Uh,
With the first player with a number 100 on his back, well, that'll be a jersey worth buying.
I thought I saw that in spring training once.
It may well have occurred already,
Hmm.
but yes, it is harder to know them. So to get back to your question about why I chose this, when I sat down and looked at subjects I might do, my literary agent suggested I do Mariana Rivera. Good subject. I don't speak Spanish. And I don't think that any non-Spanish speaking white girl ought to be in the business of trying to write about somebody whose mother tongue she can't speak. You
Hmm.
don't get the nuance. You don't get even if I could get permission, right? You can't hear them. So I wouldn't do that. That doesn't mean it isn't a good subject for somebody else. It just wouldn't be ethical for me. Um, but so the truth is though, the way the game is played now, colludes against stardom and colludes, Joe Madden, the great manager, says it colludes against greatness, um, which I completely agree with. Every analytic efficiency that says, hit the ball, the three true outcomes, or the way we're going, the home run, the, strikeout, the walk, means that there are too many home runs, in my view. I was incredibly gratified. I don't think I'd ever say this out loud. I agreed with Alex Rodriguez last night when he said home runs are boring. Well, I said it first. It's in the book. I don't even look up anymore. But the great stars of the past don't exist in Major League Baseball these days.
Do you
I'm,
think that's a financial thing?
I think it's a very good, I think it's a lack of imagination. I mean, look at Otani, who is, of course, a great global star. But if who's up there on the rankings of who makes what in off the field endorsements, there's only really one Otani commercial that you see here. That may be a very deliberate strategy and a deal he made with New Balance that would be the whole thing. Fine. But, my question to you would be, why hasn't somebody offered Aaron Judge a deal for dog food? I mean, can you imagine, commercials built around this huge, guy with his two little dogs walking down a New York City street, which you can see, on YouTube's, and this is what, big Aaron Judge feeds his little dogs. And I make sure that it's healthy. And he could actually gain points by educating the world, because I didn't know this that all the newfangled grain-free diets, which are trendy, are actually give dogs heart failure.
Hmm.
So use a little imagination. Find a way to let people, a great commercial lets you know something about somebody.
So you
And
say let's use imagination. Who's responsible for that? Is it the team? Is it the players' representatives? Where does that fall?
There is a clear, Mike Rizzo and Buck Showalter and God knows how many other people said to me, we don't produce and market stars the way the NBA does, even the way the NFL does, right? And that's shocking because NFL players used to be completely anonymous, don't even have their names on the backs of their jerseys. They wanted them to be kind of interchangeable because they dropped like flies. And that's the way Major League Baseball has become. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a very good question that you ask. Is it that they make enough money that they don't want endorsements? Is Aaron Judge somebody who's private enough that, he doesn't want that? There ought to be at Major League Baseball headquarters somebody under the age of 30, for God's sake, who knows how to market to younger people. And, they all have their foundations, and that's great. I'm not saying in any way that it isn't, but there's all these stories, this year about guys who've gone back and bought, and Judge is one of them, a diner that fed him when he was a kid and he couldn't afford um, that what he needed to be able to become 6'7" or whatever he is. Why hasn't there been a story about that diner?
Hmm.
Why hasn't some major league television crew or MLB network gone to that diner and talked to those people? I mean, that's imagination,
It
right?
used to be the function of the PR guy on the ball clubs. Would you go to the reporter and say, "Hey, this guy's doing this guy's doing that. Maybe you want to talk about that."
PR guys in too many ball clubs and too many sports are overwhelmed, first of all. And there are some seriously good people still in the business, but too often their job is to keep you away from those ball players, or to parse out little bits of time. Um, I can't think of the last time, a PR guy tipped me or anyone I know off to a story and said, "Go check that out. That would be a really good angle." Um,
What's your take on Banana Ball?
hmm. Um, I think Jesse Cole, the man in the yellow tux, is a genius. Um, he now has nine of them. When I wrote the book, it was seven, so I will have to update that. Um, he was a guy who wanted to pitch, right? And he always thought he would be. He's a New England kid who was a bat boy for the Red Sox as a kid. And when his arm went bad, had to think of another way be be, frankly. He spent one season, one summer, as an assistant coach in Katuitt, which is one of the towns on the Cape, where there is a Cape Baseball League franchise. And sitting on that bench in Katuitt, he had a moment of revelation. I'm bored, right? Now, Jesse is a really hyperkinetic guy. Um, and you can't keep up with him because he never stops moving. And I said to him, yes, a lot of people are bored in Katuitt. But uh, he saw something from his vantage point, which was not the one he expected his life to embrace, which is that there was a disaffection and alienation, I think, between baseball and its fans. That it no longer was of the moment in most American minds. I went and did a thing on Morning Joe the other day, and I do this everywhere I go now. It doesn't matter. I was in a car, a guy was taking me to Morning Joe at 5 in the morning, and I said, and it was the great game that I'm gonna Cam Schlittler
Right.
um, threw for the Yankees, the great young rookie archetype coming in to, save the day, which he almost did last night, save for the sloppy, sloppy errors by the Yankees. But I thought, uh, I'll just ask him and everybody else, did you watch the game? Are you a baseball fan? I haven't gotten a yes to that question anywhere.
Wow.
Nobody. So yes, Major League Baseball attendance is up about 12% since they put in the new rules, almost all of it dating to 2023, or the first year of the new rules. Miss Betty, who's a character in the book, is making herself known over here. She may have to come into the shot.
Yeah, that's fine.
Um, and that I'm not poo-pooing that. That's great. But as you said, we're getting old. I did a Tony Kornheiser thing the other day, Mr.
Oh.
Tony, and
Hmm.
I said the same thing to him that you're saying to me. We're getting older. He goes, "What do you mean getting older? We're old." And I went, "Ew."
Well, he's been saying that for as long as I can remember.
That is true. But it's a good line, but it's also
Mhm.
true. The generation of fans that have supported baseball and remember the old baseball, through the 60s, golden era of the 60s, all the way back to our childhoods in the 50s when baseball finally decided to embrace African Americans en masse. Okay. I mean, well, there weren't en masse in the Jackie obviously was the end of 40, was 48. Was he 48 or 47?
47.
47. Thank you. Joe Black was 48, right? I think so. Anyway, let me not embarrass myself with forgetting important dates. Um, uh, that generation is petering out, you
Yes.
know, and they need a new generation of fans to understand why this game is worthy and to make time for it and to be interested in it. And, you've got this confluence of issues. You've got baseball with its great inventory of games and seats. It's not hard to fill an NFL stadium once a week, right?
Yep.
Even Savannah Bananas can do it. Baseball has a hard time with that. And I'm not saying that that wasn't true before. The difference is now television exposes it, and you see those swaths of seats. So what Jesse Cole saw was people aren't showing up, people don't feel welcome. They don't feel that they matter. And so his, calling card became um, fans first, entertainment always. And that equation has worked. And you know what? Major League Baseball, I'm not saying they need to do everything Jesse does. Somebody actually asked me the other day whether they should import the Savannah Bananas rule for walks, which is to say there are none, and the only reason you can walk is if you can get to first base before all the defensive players touch the ball. And I'm like, no,
No.
that's. But did you notice this year that suddenly they were playing music on loudspeaker systems throughout the ballpark between at bats?
Between at bats, yeah.
That's new. That there's more music in Major League Baseball now. Um, I mean, the Bananas, of course, do it right through an at bat. Um, I'm not sure that's entirely bad, to be perfectly honest.
Hmm.
But what he did was he set out to figure out a way to make fans feel like they mattered. The best story I can tell you about that is took place at a Bananas game in February 2023. Bill the Spaceman Lee, who was early in his in the Bananas transformation into a juggernaut, was coming back from having had collapsed in the bullpen the previous August. And it was his first game back, and I wanted to see. I mean, I adore the Spaceman, so I wanted to see the Spaceman in action. But the more important thing I saw was that one of the players of the team that's Bananas chief foil, the party animals, and they're the men in pink. One of these guys climbed um, into the stands and sat down with a boy, handed him a pen, and said, "Will you sign my jersey?"
Hmm.
Now think about that. That crystallizes everything that is different about the attitude of Major League Baseball to fans and the Bananas. And the assistant head coach of the Bananas, Adam Virant, said that kid just became a baseball fan. So I go to Mike Rizzo the next day and say, how about having, players go into the stands? Nobody on a 60-day IL ever pulled a groin signing an autograph. No, 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 you can't do it. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
You can. You can.
So in my major league, when I'm commissioner, all 10-year-olds are getting in free with accompanied by an adult. And I did the math, or I should say, I had someone do the math based on 2023 Cubs menu prices. If you did that, if you had done that, and bought a kid a soda and a small hot dog and a cotton candy or peanuts or whatever, and a small cap, it would have cost the Cubs $4 million. That is chump change to the 30 owners of major league franchises. It's the same year they paid Jason Hayward 21 million to play for the Dodgers. There are things they can do to make themselves a part of the American heart again. Imagine a press conference where Rob Manfred, who I like to refer to now as my predecessor, or I get up and say, we've listened, we've seen, we know it's expensive. You know, we know that we've optimized and monetized every opportunity to sell something in the Major League ballpark, but we get it, and we do want you back, and we do want young kids. So here's what we're going to do, and in addition, they're going to have clinics with old players, and in addition, Johnny Gomes, said Major League Baseball should buy Little League, and staff, coaches don't know how to play, don't know how to teach, don't know how to not abuse arms
Mm.
of little kids. There are so many things that can be done, including my favorite thing that I did was create a handheld game with the help of students and professors at MIT that a kid can take and use on a phone or an iPad in the ballpark to interact with the game. So we called it Beat the Bot, and a kid could sort of try to guess against the algorithm what would happen next. And we had 80 kids participate in a summer Cape League game, and kids who would never sit still for baseball before wouldn't leave the park.
Well, as the saying goes, from your mouth to God's ears. And hopefully someday someone will take some of your suggestions that are in this wonderful book, Make Me Commissioner. I know what's wrong with baseball and how to fix it. Jane, always a pleasure talking with you. Good luck. Enjoy. I see you're enjoying making the rounds to talk about it with as many people as you can. Spread the word. Good luck to you.
Well, Mark Leibovich called me an all-star spitballer yesterday, and I put it on my tombstone.
That's a compliment.
It sure is.
All right. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Ron. Take care.